gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, happy Tuesday, my friends. I am so excited to be here with you, and I'm so excited to have my friend Roseanne with me. So, Roseanne formed Hands of Time Healing in 2012 to facilitate people stuck and frustrated with their healing journey. Throughout her life's work, she noticed how a dysfunctional nervous system stood as a major barrier to sustainable personal growth, healing, recovery, and personal freedom. She helps people restore their nervous system, reducing stress-related symptoms and emotional dysregulation. By realigning our inner worlds, one changes how they explore healing and experience life. She helps her clients literally breathe endless sighs of relief as they realize how much control they have when they begin to understand the language of our energy, emotions, thoughts, nervous system, and brain. Originally from the southeast of Ireland, Roseanne grew up in a family of 6. Today, she lives a beautiful life with her husband and daughter in the suburbs of New York. So, Roseanne, I am so happy you're here. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. I am so happy to be here too. And thank you for this wonderful invitation to spend time and space with you. You know how much I value you and the work you do too.
Well, thank you. So I want to say a quick hello to Chastity. Chastity, so glad you're here. And if you are tuning in with us, drop us a comment in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're calling in from, and really want to invite you to be part of this conversation as well. And so, Roseanne, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today because the more I learn about my nervous system and how to regulate it, the more control I feel over my life and the smoother and happier my life is. So before we get into that, I want to hear about you. So where does your story start?
Okay. So I grew up right in a small little country town. Okay. I grew up on a farm. We all worked really hard. So as some people who grew up on farms might know, that you really get the feeling that you can thrive. There's always worries, whether it's the weather, whether the crop is going to be what it's going to be. There was always this monkey on your back that was keeping you in this state of constant survival mode. And in this state of kind of scarcity, a lack of abundance, and kind of that fear of there may not be enough next year or for the next time round. And on the other hand, there was this amazing sense of growth, planting seeds, seeing baby lambs jump around fields. So even from a very young age, there was this contrast of immense freedom, peace, joy, creativity, wonder, to this really kind of stuck place of very heavy, very drawn, very kind of very tight, very contracted. So from a very young age, I was kind of in between both of those. And I loved to wander in nature. So for me, where I learned my first connection to a place of, say, inner stability was when I was rambling off in the woods by myself, surrounded by nature. And back then as a child, you didn't have words for these kind of things, And whereas that now when you move into your adult years, you begin to see how these parts of my childhood played out in my adulthood. So there was already this kind of semi-conditioning where there was this fear base always kind of in the background, this worry, this kind of, anxiousness about the future. And then you'd move into those other places of great joy, great creativity, expansion. And we really began to kind of see the transition and how that template really began to land in my adult life. And the system that's always running behind the scenes. So let's say I bring you right back to my early nursing days. Okay, so here I am, a student nurse. I grew up in a tiny town. I first moved to Dublin to gain some experience. And then I jumped on a boat. It wasn't even a flight. I hadn't even taken my first flight at this stage. So I jumped on a boat and moved to London. And I started my nurse training there. So I went from this like wide open spacious to this like city of hustle and bustle, right? I did have a little transition in Dublin, but a much smaller city. So here I am, really like so happy to be in this role. And I really have this kind of natural side to my personality that's very caring. And I really wasn't prepared for the rest of kind of the world around me. So I went into the world quite unprepared, quite innocent in a way. And throughout the nurse training even, I was kind of beginning to learn about the nervous system. We were learning about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic ones being safety and connection. So there was very stressful moments throughout my nursing. And I began to kind of really kind of become very shaky and very unsure of myself. And even though everyone around me would say, you're fantastic, you're amazing, apply here, apply there, these jobs are all for you. I still had this like inside part of me that was like the complete opposite, like going, I'm not good enough. I really don't deserve to be in this position. I don't know enough yet. Yes, I have the qualifications. So all this uncertainty started to really like shake me from the inside out. And I was unknowingly extremely sensitive and had a strong sense of empathy within me. But I really didn't know how to manage any of that. I had no tools to manage any of it. So I became very overwhelmed by it all. And I would, like they would say, like leave your work at work. But that just didn't happen. Yeah. I would ruminate about my patients. I would always be very self-critical, didn't do enough. And then if I did do a great job and I went in the next day and say that job hadn't been carried through the night shift, and I was very upset about something that might have happened to a patient. So there was all this kind of judgment and standards and all of these kind of things that really came into play. So I ended up like really taking a big step back from it because I could really feel like this sense of like distress begin to take over. So when we talk about stress and the nervous system and dysregulation, it's really important to know that not all stress is bad stress. We have healthy stress, and what defines it is the recovery from it. And what defines healthy stress is that like we come away from it feeling like even more resilient, right? So it's like a big stepping stone. It's right underneath you. And then over time, what happens is that this nervous system is constantly running behind the background. Okay, we can break it down. So when I'm talking about the nervous system, I'm really honing in on the autonomic nervous system. So that part of the system that's responsible for most of our automatic responses and the automatic things that happen unconsciously in our body. All this regulation that's going on that we don't really have a lot of control over. All this balancing that's going on with hormones and breath and heartbeat and digestion and all of these things. And what the system is doing is constantly logging all of your overly stressful experiences in life from the womb right to where we are today. And because I had really no way of integrating my emotional experiences, it began to create a lot of stress within my body. And I was too young at the time to really understand it. So rather than kind of understand it, I was kept reacting to it. So my physiology was completely on a different time zone to my where my mind was at in this time and this place. So a lot of the decisions I was making was based on previous experiences that were way too stressful that I hadn't fully integrated and that were now showing up in this present moment and dominating my choices in the present moment. So again, I didn't know that at the time. So rather than kind of, and there was really no kind of guidance back then either. There was whispers in the corridors of wards about burnout, be careful, don't bring your home life to work, don't bring your work life home, keep everything like separated, be professional and all these kind of things. So everything was like in this kind of segregated kind of way. So it was like this constant bottling up of all of this emotion. And even as a child, that's how our family managed emotions. It was everything went under the rug, nothing was ever wrong, and just put a smile on your face. Okay. And so it just, my whole system just became saturated to a point where I almost felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. So I felt like I was so full that like on anything more, I wasn't going to be able to take. So I had to go back into my learning and really like work out what's going on here. And around that time, I was kind of moving in the direction of like trauma-informed care through like craniosacral therapy. I wanted to get into individual work. I wanted to get into like one-to-one style working because I didn't feel like I was kind of really using all of my kind of personal gifts with people. Okay, so I had this sense of, yes, I loved caring for people. Yes, I was really like that kind of person where people turned to if they needed somebody to talk to. I was great in kind of training and education, but I still just wasn't getting into the heart and soul of what I really felt that I was here to do. And through that work, of course, it unraveled the whole lot of it. How like unresolved emotions show up and manifest in the body. It's physiological. So everything began to like come into place. But the part again that was missing was this connection with the autonomic nervous system. So that is when I felt like everything came together. So it's like the marriage of the mind and the body, the energy and the spirit. And you're really coming home to the soul of who you are. Because if you are constantly trying to attend to the noise of your nervous system, it really like creates all this static between you and your authentic self. And it really creates that kind of sense of this huge barrier between you connecting fully with yourself. Because very stressful situations, whether it was one incident, many instances, or you had moved in the direction of like chronic stress, or maybe there was trauma stress, what that tends to do is kind of move you further and further away from yourself. And you're then constantly kind of at the mercy of these incomplete cycles of stress, ready to just launch in any moment that was similar to them. So you're no longer just dealing with, a manageable piece of stress in the moment. You're dealing with all of everything that's similar to it from the past that was too much, too fast, too soon. All of the unintegrated stuff, all wanted to funnel through this one moment in time. And hence why overwhelm happens.
So much of your story just resonates really deeply. So before I go on, I just want to say a quick hello to Emily, who's here. Thanks for being with us, Emily. Really glad you can be part of our conversation tonight. So I grew up not on a farm, but my dad was a gardener, a full-scale gardener, and it was always, I remember those days. Will there be rain? What is the garden going to look like? Will we have will we have enough? Because that was our family's livelihood. Though I was not a rambler, I was really not an outside person at all. I didn't want to be outside. I didn't want to have my hands in the dirt. I didn't want to be sweaty, dirty, near bugs, any of that. I went to college in a city. I was in Boston, and it was a huge shock from being, in my small little town, mostly, largely at home, to all of a sudden, oh my goodness, there are all of these people and all of these places and all of this stuff. And I remember just being so overwhelmed with like
Everything.
stuff. And it took me a really long time to be able to gain the vocabulary I needed to be able to express the way I felt when I was dysregulated. Because I feel like it's a really recent thing that it's become part of like the collective vocabulary. Because I know even 10 years ago, I could never have said, I'm dysregulated. I would have said, I'm overwhelmed. I could say, like, I feel out of sorts, and I would have done one of these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I never would have said, my nervous system is dysregulated. So,
Mm.
can you take a big step back for us and describe to us? Um, More about the nervous system.
Hmm.
What it does. Let's start with what it does, what it is and what it does.
Okay. So we'll just hone in on the autonomic nervous system. Okay. So there's two branches to it. Okay. So we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. A lot of people might have heard about that. So what even makes it even more familiar for people is sympathetic is more so related to like your fight flight responses. Okay. And then your parasympathetic is more well known as your rest and digest state. Okay. So there was always this misnomer that one was switched on while the other was switched off, and vice versa. But what we know is that they're both always kind of running in the background trying to balance things out. Okay. So we're just going to hone in on that, on those two parts. So what can happen over time is due to chronic stress, emotional, physical, whatever it is, and trauma stress, what tends to happen is the part of the parasympathetic nervous system that's responsible for putting the brakes on the sympathetic, the fight flight responses, becomes very worn out, if you like. So the part of that is known as your vagus nerve. This is the longest of your cranial nerves. It's connected right into the brain stem. Okay, so this is the most ancient part of your brain. This is the part of your brain that is responsible for keeping you alive. And that is its sole priority. The first part to develop, it's connected with your heartbeat, your breath, okay? And it basically, this nerve innervates practically every organ all the way from here, all the way down to the base of your abdomen, down as far as the bladder, okay? And all the way down. So if you can imagine all of the organs that are in there. So this is like, it has a huge responsibility for regulating the systems of the body, for regulating this like stop go system, this fight flight, and this rest and digest. We need fight flight, okay? We need healthy sympathetic arousal. That's what helps you and me be here now, motivated to communicate, to share, to talk, to be excited about things, to play, to be creative, to get up and do what we need to do. That's all healthy sympathetic. And then we have the unhealthy part where without the balance of the parasympathetic, we can end up in sympathetic overdrive. So this is where the fight, flight, freeze and fawn responses become very easily triggered. And when we lose the brakes, which is like your parasympathetic, okay, so if you like, some people like the analogy of like driving a car, okay, so we have the accelerator, the brake, accelerator is sympathetic, brake is parasympathetic. We lose the brakes. We are at the mercy of this system being so easily triggered in almost every situation where there is a slight little bit of activation. Okay, whether that be excitement or the sense of like, I have to go to the shop and do this and do that, and everything suddenly begins to feel like a really arduous event where things that we used to cope with, we are no longer really coping with very well. And we're constantly going around feeling like we are full to the brim and just at our complete limit or over the limit. So the parasympathetic nervous system the brakes can also get stuck on too. So this is where we're going around feeling like a ton of bricks is attached to us. And that no matter how much sympathetic arousal we try and bring into the system, we're not getting the energy. We're not getting the get up and go. So we can feel very lethargic, very heavy, and very drained. So polyvagal theory came out, and they broke this down even further, or should I say even opened it up even further, right? So we have the autonomic nervous system, we have the two branches, sympathetic, parasympathetic, but we have these three states, okay? State 1, sympathetic, already kind of discussed this, okay? State 2, the dorsal vagal. The dorsal vagal travels down the back line. It's like you think of the dorsal fin of a fish. So it travels down the back line of the body. It's that other part of the vagus nerve that kind of innervates everything that's below the breathing diaphragm. So it's deeply connected to the gut and everything below there. So that is like the brakes get stuck on. So that's when we're in dorsal vagal, we're in this like lethargic, low energy, shut down, withdrawn kind of state. Hypo, sympathetic, hypervigilant, hyperactivity, busy mind, energy bouncing all around the place, ungrounded, can't really come to land. And then the third state is our ventral vagal. So that is associated with the ventral part of our vagus nerve. So this is the part of that nerve that's connected to everything like above the breathing diaphragm, okay? And that is a state where we feel like ourselves, that we feel like, wow, I've met myself again in my energy sense, in my emotional sense, in my connection to myself and the world around me and people around me. It's where you really feel like you've come home to you. And this state is very stable. There's a lot of flexibility in there. There's a lot of adaptability. It's a state where we can be very curious, where kind of nothing really troubles us. We have this open heart. We're full of compassion. We want to engage. We're like excited about life. So it's this amazing, beautiful state. And part of that state, that ventral vagal, is known as our social engagement system, which is kind of really focused on like our face and our tone of voice. So within that system, so when we're in ventral vagal, the reason why they call it the social engagement system is because we feel safe and connected. And when we feel like that, it's that place where we're very interactive. We're open to interactions. And our kind of body, our resonance, our tone, really kind of sends that out into the world too. So we feel very aligned inwards and aligned outwards as well. So we really feel like we're in this state of kind of harmony, inner and outer. There's a flow, there's a freedom to you, there's less hiccups. So the whole thing about it is that we're never just in, like, we don't stay just in one state, okay? We live with this ancient system in these modern times. The ancient system does not differentiate between the saber-toothed tiger hiding in the bush ready to get you and your deadlines. It equates it to the same level of threat. And where with all of this knowledge comes into play is that we get to come in and we get to go, hang on a second, I can totally handle this and I'm not about to die, right? But if we're like stuck in a constant state of survival mode, not knowing anything about all of this, life can begin to feel very threatening very, very easily. Everything can begin to feel Like it's a big ordeal. And what tends to happen is that we get all these physiological responses. So stress is physiological first. And what ends up happening is that we tend to react to the physiology. Okay, so when we don't understand this, the mind is trying to make sense of all of this. So it's now going to start creating stories based on what's going on inside the body, based on what state you're in, and really try and validate that for you. That's the job of the mind, is going to try and make sense of things. So there's a lot going on all at once. And the thing to really kind of appreciate about the nervous system is, yes, it remembers everything from the womb to now. It is constant, like picking up on stuff around us and within us. But at any point in time, we can kind of step in and begin to kind of decipher what's real in this moment in time and what was then. And that's really the core kind of part of integrating this kind of work into your healing, so that you can begin to like really feel, like you said, have the sense of personal agency over like where your thoughts are going, the energy of your body, how to kind of begin to take care of yourself in very intelligent ways, but also how to begin to build resilience back into the system. Because it's never too late to rebuild vagal tone and to have that well nurtured, so that when stress does strike, we have the balance of both systems rather than just sympathetic running, and taking you with it all the time.
Thank you for that beautiful explanation. I loved how you defined each of the three states. And when I heard you talk about ventral vagal, I was like, ooh, that's where I want to live. Like, that sounds like the most comfortable place. But in thinking about any given day, right, I may wake up and feel like, I'm in ventral vagal and it's going to be a great day and the sun is shining, and then I go to have breakfast and the milk is spoiled, right? So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that, my is can you explain like what is happening there? Like that's the
Yeah,
parasympathetic sympathetic
yeah.
that's kicking on.
Well, really, if we are nurturing the nervous system and if we're restoring health to the nervous system, we can kind of like look at the spoiled milk and go, the milk is spoiled, without having too big of a disturbance to the nervous system itself, without having to like really, like, as they say, like take us out of our window of tolerance. So what kind of defines our ability to like tolerate even the most minimal amount of stress, as depending on how people would define that, is really like the health of our autonomic nervous system. And the what defines that is our ability to be adaptable. Okay, there's flexibility in there. There's stability, and it's Dan Siegel that actually has he calls it like faces. So flexibility, adaptability. There's energy within the system. There's a sense of coherence. So what's on the outside and kind of what you're feeling on the inside is really married. That it's true, and that you're really kind of in this place of like connected to the mind and body. So when we wake up, and it's like, it's just like this kind of thing, like before we like ask why, kind of just check in, see where we are. Are we in a place where we're kind of heading off to the races? Are we feeling kind of low, or are we kind of humming around that middle place? So the system is always running in the background. So like you said, we get up, we're in that middle kind of ground. So the milk is spoiled. You're like, there's no spare milk. Can't have my breakfast. I'm going to be hungry. So we start racing off with all of these other. So we can kind of sense that dysregulation in the body. So in that moment, when we have that awareness, we have choices. We can either regulate or ignore it and keep moving on, right? And so there's always this kind of balancing going on. And depending on what our awareness is as to whether we downregulate, whether we're upregulating, or whether we're kind of nurturing that middle ground where, unexpected things can happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to throw us completely off balance. Yeah, I can hear you in the background there. Yes. So, so there's kind of always a sense of like really staying very attuned to what's going on. And then from there, when we kind of have this information, we feel like we have more choices in those moments as to how we interact or react.
So, can you talk more about regulation and what that can look like? Like,
Yeah.
can you give us some strategies
Yeah.
that we can use?
Yes, I can do both.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
we can so let's talk about say we have that moment where we're kind of like we're at that limit. We can feel it. Okay. We know the pressure's on. Maybe we've ignored the little signals along the way where we've just like gotten along with whatever was going on. And now we've like, say, disowned these certain boundaries that we had in place to take care of ourselves. So like we're literally ready to pull our hair out. Okay. So we know that we are heading into the fight flight responses. We're heading into like this like very activated energy in the body. This very like there could be a lot of emotion attached to it now. And we're getting to that point where, if we think of the archetypes, the stress archetypes, are you going to turn into the yeller? Are you going to turn into this like unmerciful warrior that just is going to like run people over, So like when we like, and everybody has their kind of own way of these things showing up. So what I love to do is really help people kind of even break down what this fight, flight, freeze, fawn thing looks like. Okay, because they're very kind of bland words. So when you really like own it and I go, yes, I yell. So right, here we are, real activation. You have all this charge inside you, and now it's going to come out through your voice. Okay, so we know that before all that happens, there's all of these signals and signs along the way that's saying slow down, stop. It's like the brakes of the car aren't working. We're breaking, all of these lights along the way. And now we're at that point of, okay, the sirens are coming on and that alarm bell is not switching off. So the quickest way to disarm this is through your breath or to your eyes. But we also have you choose journaling, right? So we can create an awareness through introspection, right? We can kind of look back, we can see these habits, these signs, these triggers, and we can really get to know ourselves well on this. And the better we know ourselves and we understand what's kind of happening, the easier it is to kind of meet ourselves with compassion. And I go, whoa, how did I get to this point? I ignored this. I neglected myself during that. I kept going without food. Maybe I didn't hydrate myself. I knew I should have gotten up a half an hour earlier. Or, you kind of left that voice behind that said, I kind of knew the date on the milk was expiring, but I took a chance. So there's always these parts, always these little parts. But what's important is to get to know your parts well. To really kind of meet yourself with this immense compassion and go, whoa, like this, even me being at this limit is kind of scary for me. And we end up almost like scaring ourselves if we're in this fight flight. And so we can be the mediators. We can meet ourselves and we can really find out what works well for us in those moments and build in these better strategies that are very specific to us and our needs. And they do include those boundaries, because the job of boundaries are for us to kind of not hit those limits. So there's it's kind of multifactorial, but at the truth of it, if we really take a step back, okay, yes, At any moment in time, I can stand still. I can stand still. And I can take a breath. And if for whatever reason, breathing is very difficult for you, it was probably one of the most challenging parts for me in trying to regulate my system, because I think I'd held my breath for like 40 years.
Yeah.
So even as a nurse, I was like, I could like help you breathe, but totally ignored my own. And even I remember lying down in my first yoga class going, she's teaching this wrong. Like she's like, I was totally critical. And like the real reflection of coming back and like going, oh my God, like this is powerful. So the like I can take like an inhale and a long, slow exhale. And in a second, something can change. In 60 seconds, I have got all of the space. I can now feel like I have choice in the moment. Okay. And I can take care of myself. And that these limits that are here, that I don't have to ride life on the limit, on the edge of limit, that I can begin to really come back a little closer, a little closer, a little closer, to like saying to myself, I'm actually very safe in this moment right now. And like really kind of in a very earnest way, kind of look at the trail of like missed steps or missed signals, and like go, wow, like I in a way I kind of really created this through ignoring all of that, through neglecting myself, or through taking on too much, or whatever it was. But the most important thing is not to add more stress onto something that's already stressful enough. And we can easily do that.
I love all of that so much. I want to just pull this up. Our friend Ashok saying that you are amazing. But I wanted to talk for a second about what you said about being introspective. Because you
Mm.
hit on something with journaling that I see with my clients all the time. And it's the more we journal, the more self aware we become. The more self aware we become, the more self compassionate we can be. And the more compassion we have for ourselves, the more we can grow in self love. And being brave enough to look at those situations. For me, I was kind of laughing when you were talking about the yeller because I am the passive aggressive pot banger at the end of the day when I have had it and I'm hungry and I'm tired and mom has to make dinner when everyone else in the house, A, can cook, and B, chooses to go do something they want to do while they wait for mom to make dinner. And I remember this one specific day when I was just so unhappy to be making dinner. I was at the top. And instead of saying, guys, I don't feel like making dinner, let's order a pizza or or find a creative solution, I was the only thing I could think to do was be loud, because if I was loud in the kitchen, clearly someone would hear that I need help and they would come and rescue me.
Yeah.
Turns out nobody wants to come to the kitchen when mom is banging pots and pans, right? And so when I was finally able to acknowledge, oh, this isn't working for me, right? Um, the next time that happened, I was able to pause and I was able to really think about what I needed and ask for it in a way that met my needs. So I could say to my husband, will you please come here, get these ingredients from the refrigerator, stir this pot while I chop the onion, and then go set the table. It was
Beautiful.
amazing how just taking a breath and being aware that's what was happening got me to calm down enough to be able to have some choices. I think, too, the other thing that I often do when I am feeling, when I start feeling dysregulated, it's to go either in my garden or to my baby seedlings or houseplant or something and just be with the dirt and the plants. And it's funny because, again, as a kid, I was somebody who did not like dirt or sweat or bugs or anything that came with the garden. And now it is one of my favorite things to do to regulate my nervous system is, I'm feeling a little heightened. Let me go walk barefoot on the grass. Let me go pull a few weeds. Even just for a couple of minutes, I can just feel everything settle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's like you hit on the most important part of it, because that's really what we're moving towards is the feeling of that down regulation. So we can like feel the dysregulation, right? We can all feel like the heart is pounding out of your chest, the tension is rising, the jaw is clenching, the breath is shallow, maybe you're agitated, you're tapping around the place, thoughts are unfocused, the voice is beginning to get louder and louder. And and it's so easy for us to bypass when we're actually in regulated states. And what we've learned through research is that we actually really have to slow down to really savor these moments, to really absorb them, so that they can actually like reach that part of our brain that can be so sensitized to stress, to begin to balance it out again. So it's like, as you refer to, like knowing when we're in sympathetic arousal. So, but also coming back to like you're moving into ventral, so you're down regulating. You're beginning to learn how to take care of yourself. You're beginning to recognize it. And what this gives you over time is every time you successfully complete a stress cycle. So that stress, healthy stress is activation, deactivation, and recovery. And every time we complete one of those cycles, we're increasing our resilience. We're increasing this ability to be able to interact with stress without it sweeping us off our feet. So it's really empowering you from the inside out. But you're trying to like really help your system to absorb these magnificent moments that we bypass so easily every day. And these moments are available in any moment in time, whether it's that short walk to the car, where we can take in the sounds of the birds, feel the air, take that walk a little slower. So when you feel like that fast pace is coming in, the racing, like the banging of the pots in the kitchen, right? So we can begin to like slow it down, because that's very like that energy of activation can be very like to the system. It's like, yes, bang louder, go for it. And it's like there's something about this charge, and because you're trying to discharge this energy, right? And anger is an interesting one, and it's so great that you have the awareness that like that is kind of passive aggressive. So it's a way of kind of like you're not saying what you need. You want them to hear that you have needs, but we haven't been clear about them. So again, we're coming back to being clear about our needs, and then having those boundaries and being clear about these boundaries. And so the more we can be clear about what we need, the easier it is to state that. And so everybody kind of around knows. So nobody's playing guessing games. Nobody's playing, and it's the same. And that's really like we're getting into the kind of the relationship side of things. But at the essence of our being, like we're born to both survive and connect. And the more connected we can feel with people, the more regulated we feel. But connecting with people in an authentic way. Not in a way that we think we should show up, but in an authentic way. And the body can sense when you're being authentic. The body can sense when you're telling a story that's not connected. Okay, and the body can really sense when you are speaking your truth from your heart, from the essence of your being. The tone changes. The tone changes in the room. And like it's such an important part of this nervous system regulation, because the more we are connected to that truth within us, the more relaxed our bodies feel, no matter how difficult the story is that we're telling. Because people listen differently, they hear differently. And it's so much easier to be compassionate from a place of regulation than dysregulation. And the other side of that introspection, so to keep kind of a sense of balance in it, is that we also need to be aware of like when introspection is becoming like rumination.
Yeah.
And I know you speak about this, and you teach, like, the reason why I'm a big fan of you is because you teach it in such a sensible way. So you speak about the amazing parts of journaling and all of those wonderful things that you mentioned, the self-awareness. It can really be helpful with emotional regulation. It can give you that space to kind of zoom out or take the bird's eye view of things. And it can also like move you into like, we've got to be very careful of like the kind of harsh critic coming in there, or the overwhelm coming in through the writing. So there again, having the awareness of your nervous system dysregulation as you're writing, where is it taking you? And is it keeping you in cycles that are actually keeping your stress activation high rather than completing the cycle? And that's where, it becomes very sensible to like, if you are into journaling as a resource to help you with healing and growth, to really work with somebody who understands it at the level that you do, because you give both sides, and you help people really kind of see the kind of like wave the flag of like going, okay, this is when we should add structure to journaling. When we're like, do we know the purpose of our journaling? And to really kind of have it so that it is bringing you into stability rather than further into instability or dysregulation.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I want to pull this comment up too. You can't write if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. Writing engages the parasympathetic system.
Absolutely.
That was
Slows you down. It
beautifully
slows you
put.
down. Yeah.
Um, and I am learning more and more that
Thank
slowing
you, Rachel.
down is almost always the right answer for me. I'm feeling anxious, slow down. I'm feeling worried, slow down. I'm feeling
Yeah.
overwhelmed, slow down.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remind myself of this probably 23 times a day at least. Just slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gonna
And
be okay.
really like kind of being able to identify when you're speeding up, because sometimes it's the thoughts that start taking you, or sometimes it's tension in the body, and next thing you know, that's like taking the thoughts off. So there's always these little kind of nuances, and the more attuned we can be to both kind of what's happening within the body, what's happening between you and me, and like what's actually really the truth of this moment. Roof is stable above my head, ground is stable beneath my feet. I think the milk is good in the refrigerator, but I don't drink it, so I think I can get away with it. But it's like, yeah, it's like all of this kind of like, like life can just become so much more fun. Things can become less rigid, less black and white. There's all this space for like color to come in, for creativity to come in, to let your heart sing a little bit.
Oh, I love that so, so much. So, can you now, Roseanne, please tell us how people can get a hold of you, how they can work with you, what that looks like?
Well, they'll have quite a big problem trying to catch a hold of me. I walk very fast. I walk like there's a saber-toothed tiger behind me. I'm joking. So you can find me at www.handsoftimehealing.com. So that's been mine for close to 12 years now. It's kind of grown with me. I'm really kind of loving the space that it's in right now. I feel like I've kind of stepped into it representing really me in truth and light and in what I'm here for. And through that, you can kind of have a little browse. I run what's called the RISE program, And something that's been very close to my heart, and a mission that I've really been working towards for the last couple of years, is making sure that everybody has access to this resource of information in relation to self-regulation, in relation to your autonomic nervous system, how to upregulate, how to downregulate, and how to begin to kind of bring a sense of like emotional regulation back into your life, because it can be very debilitating. So there's the DIY program. So that's the do it yourself, and that is affordable for everybody. And pretty much the framework that I use with one-to-one people is in there. It's got a huge resource library. It goes into breath work. It goes into just a lot of really helpful tools and techniques. You can work with me one-to-one through a 6-week program. You can drop in. I have people who send me a message and go, something really kind of terrible happened. I'm gone off the charts. Can you help me come back? Or like lay this out a little bit. And so there's a couple of different avenues. So primarily, that's the best place to find me. You can contact me through there, and I'm also on LinkedIn. That's my social media platform of choice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roseanne.
Thank
It
you.
has been such a delight learning from you tonight and connecting with you. Gonna make a little plug for anyone listening who might be interested. Tomorrow night is our monthly journaling mini retreat. This one is specifically for my friends who have been separated or divorced, whether you're going through it now or it is in the rear view mirror, or it's even maybe a little ahead of you and you know it's coming. Come and spend an hour with us journaling, and take care of yourself. So that is my invitation to you. Thank you.
Love
Thank
the
you,
breath.
Roseanne.
Thank
Thank,
you. This has
thank
been
you,
such a pleasure. Thank you.
everyone, for being here with us, and we will see you next time.